Hello and welcome to your go-to Detroit Pistons podcast, the Pistons Pulse, co-hosted by me, Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops, a former D1 hooper and current teacher, husband, and father of three amazing kids.
And I'm Omari Sankofa, the second Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press.
And of course, we're blessed to always be joined by our producer, Wes Davenport, who will be joining us later in a brand new webcam looking really good, Omari. Wes is looking real good. We're going to play everybody's favorite game, Sheet or Sham, at the end of the episode. Omari, is your hair different again this week? I feel like it looks different again.
No, it's the same. I had it tied up in a ponytail, and I just let it down today because I don't like leaving it in a ponytail for too long. I don't know why. I don't think it damages the hair, but it just shifts. Like sometimes my hair is over here, sometimes it's over there. It just varies. Depends on how it feels that day.
It's always looking good. I just shaved all of mine off here before we started recording, and it's just nice. I don't have to worry about anything. It's beanie season out here in Kansas. I don't got to worry about it messing up my hair. I've kind of appreciated going bald. Real quick before we get started tomorrow, I got to share a quick story. As many of you know, I coach high school football. On Friday, all of a sudden, before the game has started, very few people there, high school Friday night, and somebody walks over to me on the field in a Detroit Pistons hoodie. Remember, guys, I'm in the middle of nowhere, Kansas, and someone wears a Detroit Pistons hoodie that isn't me, Omari. And so I start talking to this guy, Christian, shout out Christian. He went to school, grew up in Michigan around Detroit, went to school out there, trying to get into radio and all of that stuff. And he actually came out to Kansas. We have one out here that's a pretty good radio station, was calling the high school football game on Friday night out here. So Detroit Pistons fans everywhere. It was just really cool. I got to chat it up with him for about 20 minutes. We'll stay in touch, see if I can't help him out, score some stuff, maybe back in Detroit, either writing or doing radio or anything like that. But just wanted to shout out Christian. Was not expecting Omari to see a Pistons fan before my game. Like I say, out here in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. I feel like Pistons fans are everywhere. Like we'll be on the road and we'll see, fans with Pistons jerseys just walking around after the game. Even just being in Montreal last Thursday, I had a waiter that had went to a Pistons game before. I went to some vintage clothing store and the guy there was actually born in Windsor, so he had some Pistons fandom in them. So I feel like they're a low-key team that's secretly one of the more popular. It's really not a secret. They have 3 championships. So I think any championship team will have a pretty big fan base. But Pistons fans really are everywhere. That fan base gets around and travels.
Yeah, and that's what in Denver, I ran into a fan, and then when I was coming back from Summer League in Vegas, ran into him in the airport again. He finally got on Twitter and he hit me up. I saw that he quote tweeted that original tweet from July, and I interacted with a little bit in DM. You've said it before. We always like to kind of open the pods with it. We love the interaction. I think that's one of the coolest things that I'm not sure we expected to happen as much as it has, Omari, is just the people when we're at games. I know you way more than me, but anytime I go to a game, there's people or in the arena, fans, all of that. I'm always shocked every time about how many people listen to the episode, to the podcast.
Yeah, and you were being recognized all over when we were in Vegas. So, we'll see if that continues once we get you back up to Detroit at some point. I was at the open practice on Sunday, and I was looking for somebody else, and I was just walking through one of the aisles, and somebody called my name, and I dapped him. I didn't know, I had no clue who it was, and he didn't introduce himself or anything. I assume he's a pod listener, so if that's you, nice to meet you. But I assume it's from the pod at this point. Nobody recognizes me from my writing at all. It's always, I listen to the pod. It's all right, we appreciate it. We really do.
How was the open practice? Before we get in, we're going to talk about the Thunder game. We're going to talk about rotations and lineups and Jaden Ivey off the bench, all that stuff. We're going to get into all of it. If you're here with us live, drop some comments in the chat. We'll see if we can get to it. And then again, Sheet or Sham at the end. But real quick, how was the open practice? I saw a lot of people tweeting about it, sharing videos. I saw the rookies had to do some dancing or singing or something. I haven't watched much of it, to be honest.
Yeah, they like to do a little bit of rookie hazing at the end. We had Sarah Thompson dressed as Ken. If you saw the Barbie movie, you know that Ken has been a popular character this year. And I think Marcus Sasser with Scooby-Doo. One of the rookies dressed as a hot dog. I forget who. And then they all sang at mid-court. Although they didn't really sing. They kind of half sang. So that was disappointing. But as far as open practices go, honestly, it was probably not that exciting just because they didn't do a scrimmage like they usually do. I went to some open practices when I was in high school and middle school, and they always had a scrimmage, and then Dwayne Case would have scrimmages. So maybe Monty just didn't have a scrimmage that day for whatever reason. Maybe, that's not what he wanted to do for fans, or maybe he's wanted to get people home in time to watch the Lions, since the Lions came out at 4:15 and the Pistons open practice was at 3. So I'm sure some people appreciated being able to get home in time for that game. The Lions are 5-1, by the way. And it was
fine. The Chiefs are as well. Just in case you wanted to know that the Chiefs are also 5-1 right now.
Chiefs are also 5-1 right now. Their one loss being, against the home team here. But we're gonna move past that. They didn't have Travis Kelce, so
or Chris Jones.
And Chris Jones.
You guys didn't have Jamo. You didn't have Jameson Williams, so it's fair.
Yeah, no, we didn't have Jameson Williams, which was, of the injuries in that game, I think that was or I guess it wasn't an injury. He was suspended, but that was the biggest absence, in my opinion.
Wow. Over Travis Kelce. Oh, no, we're not going down this road. We're leaving. Shout out the Lions. They're having a great season. They're one of the best teams in the NFL. It's not just like a real feel-good story. This team is legit. They're really good. Let's talk about the other Detroit team, Omari. Oklahoma City Thunder game comes out. Thunder are essentially playing all their dudes. They build a lead. Cade didn't play in this game. Boyan again. Monte Morris. Jalen Duren didn't play in this game either. I don't think it was a surprise that OKC built the lead. What I like seeing was then whenever those guys kind of went out for the Thunder, Omari, we saw the Pistons kind of second and a half, third units really take over this game. They end up coming back and the Pistons win this game. What were your takeaways? What was the main takeaway? Any big thoughts from this game?
Yeah, Monty called it a culture win afterward. And I mean, of course, it's preseason, but just the way they went out on Sunday against Phoenix, where they were down 20 points in the opening quarter. I think they threw up as many as 26. And then obviously they sent that game into overtime and had to come back toward the end. But disappointing performance overall. They had KD and, Book, but I don't think any of those guys played more than 15 minutes. So for them to come back, you have an OKC team that was basically playing a home game because Lou Dort, he addressed the crowd before the game, but he's from Montreal. And of course, Shea is from Toronto. So, you had two high profile Canadians in that game. So basically a road game for the Pistons, and for them to be able to rally back, especially with the lineup they had at the end, where you have Marcus Sasser, Wiseman, and Stanley Umude, who all kind of caught fire at the same time. They really stole that game from them. And if they're not going to start well, you at least have to finish well. And that's what they did in that game. They finished. I don't think they took their first lead until there was like a minute 20, a minute 30 left when Sasser hit a three. Might have been a little bit more than that, but at the very end of the fourth quarter, and then you come around and win. So that's what you want to see. You want to see them fight. We don't know how good they'll be at this year, but you want to see them compete at the very least. And in both games, they really have competed. They've finished stronger than they've started, and we'll see if Monty can figure out how to get them going a little bit sooner.
Yeah, what I took away from that game, Omari, and I'm interested to get your thoughts is, we know Cade and Duren are going to start. I assume Boyan's going to start. So you could really argue the Pistons were missing 3 of their starters, and we'll talk more about that in just a little bit. And I would say 4 of their close to best 8 players when you add in Monte Morris. Mm-hmm. What I thought this showed was, I still don't know if we know how good the top end talent on this roster is yet. We don't know how good we don't even know what the starting lineup is going to be, let alone how good it's going to be. What I thought it showed was what Troy Weaver has done, though, in a positive way with the rest of the roster, building out the roster, a talented roster at 11, 12, 13, 14, even guys on two-way. I think Stanley Umude, he's not even on a two-way, actually, but I thought he has looked really, really good. I want to give him some love. I tweeted out, I don't know if they have this in the plans, but I hope when the Pistons fill out their 15-man roster, Umude is the guy that gets that third two-way, which can't happen until they fill out the 15th spot on the roster. I just think it really shows the depth that he has built, which goes to competition in practice and fighting for spots, but also every once in a while throughout a season, you need those guys. And I feel like Weaver, for everything people may want to critique, I feel like that showed out in this game with the guys you mentioned, Sasser, Umude, even the bigs, right? They look good in those situations.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we come back to, is that this team has depth that they just haven't had, really since I've been covering the team. And this is going to be my 4th season doing that. They really haven't had depth in all those years, just due to injuries, due to rebuild, this and that. Stanley's been great. For him to hit those big threes that he did, I think he's good defensively. He's a solid athlete, and he's a guy that's been in there, I guess, G League pipeline. He was with the Motor City Cruise last year, spent some time with the Pistons. Only appeared in 1 game, I believe, but we saw him in practice behind the scenes, getting reps in. And they appear to be playing off. He played pretty well toward the end of summer league as well. So, there's some traction there. I'll be curious to see where he ends up, whether he just returns with the Motor City Cruise or can kind of work his way into a bigger role. But I mean, you just look at this team's need for wings in general, and if he can really shoot the ball like that, then absolutely he's a guy that should stick around in some capacity.
And I want to mention, we're not even seeing Isaiah Livers, right? So that's another
Mhm.
guy. Of the 14 rostered spots, you didn't have 5. So you're down to 9. And so again, those two-way guys, a guy like Stanley Umude, they get a chance and they play really well. Omari, was there anybody or anything from this game that was a little bit disappointing? They got out to the slow start. I didn't think the energy was really good early. I'll give a quick one here, just the team in general. I still am a little frustrated with the overall ball screen defense. I think the guards and the perimeter guys are struggling to navigate those ball screens. I don't know if it's communication from the bigs or what. I know it's preseason, and so I doubt Monty and Dan Burks are throwing everything out there. I'm kind of interested to see if we see a little bit more of at the line of the screen, maybe some hard hedging, that type of stuff, because just the straight drop coverage hasn't looked real good, in my opinion.
Yeah, they've been, for the most part, been switching 1 through 4, and then just having whoever the big is drop, as you mentioned. And for that to work, you just need your perimeter defenders to really navigate those screens and just limit penetration. Desar has been great at it, but that's
Yes.
his thing. I think Killian's a guy who could fight through screens. I think Sasser's done some of that, but as a whole, this team just hasn't really quite figured that out. It was an issue last season as well. You could blame you for whatever it is, but this team just right now doesn't really have the defenders to make that scheme work. Well, I mean, really, when you have bad defenders, no scheme's going to work, right? I mean, there's only so much you could do to hide that. So the defense is a work in progress, and I do think that Monty's rotations will be influenced by guys who can compete on defense, because that's all they've talked about all preseason, is that they want to make a defensive leap next season. Really, the main thing that was just bad about that game was just the first half. I think they committed 15 fouls and they had 12 turnovers against 12 assists, and it just doesn't matter how well you shoot. And they didn't shoot that bad in the first half, but actually, they shot pretty well in the first half, 55%. I'm looking at it now, but it doesn't matter how well you shoot when you're turning over the ball at that rate and putting opposing players on the line at that rate. And it was just like a lot of mental errors. I thought, like, stuff they cleaned up after halftime. And Monty says about this group is that they show remorse, right? They understand when they do wrong and they try to put their heads down and correct it. And obviously, the second half they did clean up a lot of those issues while still shooting the ball well, and that's why they came back and won. And they really locked down defensively in that last period too. Like, OKC shot above 50% almost the whole game until that last period. They shot like 6 for 26 overall. So they did kind of round into shape toward the end. And I think some of that was just having, some good defenders on the floor, like Monty's praised Sasser just for his defense thus far. But it's just these slow starts, man. Like, I don't know. Part of it, okay, like, this is not the starting lineup we're going to see during the season. There's no Cade, there's no Bogey. So it's tough to maybe criticize them too toughly on that quite yet, but it also was an issue on Sunday. So they just have to find a way to get that energy going immediately.
Yeah, and what I do like that they do defensively, and maybe this could get things going, is I like when they pick the ball up full court. I think they have some guys that can do that. That's something that Asar can do. I think it's something Jaden Ivey could be really good at. Killian can do that. If Sasser's in the game, that's something he can do as well. Let's check in on the rookies just a little bit here, Omari. Sasser played really well, right? He has some big shots. You saw that nuclear scoring that we saw in that final Summer League game out in Vegas. Where do you think he fits into this? I don't want to go completely into the rotation just yet, but what is the role? Is there somebody in the backcourt you feel like he fits the best with? Like Cade kind of makes sense because you have the bigger guard, but I doubt he's getting minutes with Cade. Where do you think he's just going to fit into this rotation where there's a lot of guards that need minutes between Cade and Ivy, and I assume Alec Burks is going to get minutes, and they traded for Monte Morris. Where do you see this flowing and going for Marcus Sasser after a really good game?
That's a good question. I mean, we talked about that with Monty this week. I mean, you have 5 guards who are our lead ball handlers and all look like they're ready to do it. Between Sasser and Kill, I think that really puts pressure on the guys in front of them to be on their A game. And we'll see. Actually asked Monty how deep he plans to go with his rotation. And he said it's really hard to go past 10 players unless you're going with some special lineups. I don't think half of that's going to be point guards. Like I just don't think that's likely. So somebody probably gets squeezed out. Realistically, it's probably going to be tough for Sasser to see the floor unless he's just really balling out. And I think the things that help him are one, he could shoot it, but two, he could also really defend. And I know we're going to talk about Killian a little bit here as well, but I think if you were the best defensive guard in that group and you're a guy that could take pressure off of Cade, Monty talks a lot about how much Cade had to do when he was healthy as a rookie. Like he was defending Lever team's best wing and he was running the offense. And that's just really taxing for a lot of players. You typically don't see guys who are the lead initiators on offense also, take the toughest defensive assignments. So if Sasser can really, really defend and knock down those open shots, like I think that works in his favor. He's a guy that played a little bit off ball in Houston. Like we know he can do it. And that's really what it boils down to. I think defensively, he could be the best defender in that group, and that's also going to help him as well. So he just, you can't really have any bad games. Like the margin for error is very thin for all these guys with the competition back there.
Yeah, I wonder just because you have vets and some guys that have been in the organization a little longer, and quite honestly, a guy like Killian Hayes, you're about to have to make a decision on one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
If those guys get the first crack, but Sasser, because he's so good, is putting pressure on them to perform, and then if those guys don't perform, Omari, or they decide to trade him. Remember, Burks is on an expiring. Monte Morris is on an expiring.
Mm-hmm.
You may not want to keep those guys around past the trade deadline if they're not in the future plans. And then Sasser gets a chance. I think his role in the organization, I'm not saying he's not good now, Omari. I'm not saying he's not ready. I just wonder if his role really takes a jump in year two. You brought up Killian. So this comes from YouTube user. Always appreciate you in the chat watching live. Is the Killian hype train from Monty real? How does he get in the 10-man rotation without injury, as some are starting to suggest? So do you think that we're going to see Killian in that aforementioned 10-man rotation of Monty Williams? And what have you thought about his play so far?
One, I think it's tough to say just because we haven't seen Monte Morris yet, and we know what he can do, right? But I think Killian is going to work his way into that rotation one way or another. And I think that the hype train is real from Monty's end. He talked about how he had always kind of watched Killian from afar and likes his skill set. And then again, I mean, Monty talks so much about defense, and we know that Killian can really defend. And I also think that Monty's putting Killian in positions where he's comfortable, right? Like we haven't seen him shoot off ball as much. He's had the ball in his hands and he's taking those pull-up middies. So he's gotten to the rim here and there. So the ball really is in his hands a lot, which is where he's most comfortable. We saw him be more of a spot-up guy last season, and those shots fell for a few weeks, but it just wasn't quite consistent. So, once Cade is back, once Monte is back, I am curious to see how that impacts Killian, just given that he won't be able to get as many on-ball reps. I mean, he started last Thursday, and he came off the bench Sunday, so no, he's probably not going to start when some of those guys are back. So we'll see. I mean, I think there's a lot we don't know about this rotation just because a handful of guys have been hurt. So it's tough to, see kind of where Monty is on certain guys. And maybe we'll get a better feel for that this week when they play the Thunder and Dallas back to back. But I do think the Killian hype train is real. I think, he has a real fan and Monty Williams. And I think defensively, that's going to help him a lot, just given that he can do that better than everybody else.
How do you feel about the 3-guard lineup off the bench? Because essentially, if you're going to get Killian in the 10-man, that's almost what you have to. You either have to go with the starting lineup that is 3 guards, which we will talk about because my guy Sam Vecini brought it up whenever I was talking with him yesterday, and he brought up a 3-guard starting lineup. Or if you don't go a 3-guard starting lineup, then it has to be off the bench, something like Monte Morris, Alec Burks, and Killian. Or if you're still bringing Jaden off the bench, Monty, Jaden, and Killian. I don't absolutely hate it, but as you mentioned, a lot of those guys want to play with the ball in their hands. Killian almost has to play without the ball in that lineup. I mean, Monty can shoot it, and we know Jaden can play off the ball. I'm real interested to see how that fit all works for Killian with the 3-guard lineup. I think there's room to do it, right? Because this team is a little bit weak at the wing, like that 3-4, specifically the 4 spot. But I'm curious how you feel about a 3-guard lineup, whatever combination it ends up being.
Yeah, we've talked to Monty about that a lot, including today. And for those who are listening when it drops Tuesday instead of on the live show, we're recording this Monday. But we talked to Monty about it today. And he did go with some 3-guard lineups in Phoenix. He mentioned if you look at Michael as a guard in that lineup, which, I guess you could construe him being a big 2 perhaps. But he said the difference is that you had Chris Paul, who's like manning the pick and roll, and obviously this is a very different roster, with different skill sets. He talked about the challenge of making sure those guys have enough spacing around them. Obviously, if Killian's out there and he's not shooting it well, then that probably puts extra pressure on who's next to him, whether it's Cade and Ivy or Cade and Monty or whoever to really knock down shots. Monty can shoot, so that helps. But then I also asked Monty, can you see Cade playing some three? Just given that he's 6'6" with a 7-foot wingspan. And, we still make some really good defensive plays. He said, yeah. And they ran Cade some off ball actions today, with Killian playing point guard. So he really is tinkering a lot with this guard lineup. And I don't know if we'll see a 3-guard rotation immediately or every night, but I do think it's something that they'll toy with and see if it works. Because, again, you have 5 guys who are all pretty deserving of minutes. And it's going to be some tough decisions to figure out which guys are playing and which guys are coming off the bench on any given night.
All right, before we go to break, I want to get back to Stanley Umude. I think he's played really well, and so I want to give him some more love. So Mickey Jacobs said, could Umude be the 3-and-D wing that Bey wasn't? And then our guy Camille from Turkey, always shout him out, is Stanley Umude a name for the 15th spot for you? So I talked about him getting a two-way. What do you think about Umude potentially just getting that 15th spot on the roster that's not filled right now? I still think that Troy Weaver is smartly waiting to see what happens. I think I counted up the Thunder roster the other day, Omari. They have to cut 3 guys still off that Thunder roster, and that's a really intriguing roster. I think somebody pretty good is going to shake loose from that roster. So I don't blame Troy Weaver waiting, but if he ends up not scoring somebody he really likes from the Thunder or another team, I don't hate putting Umude. Maybe I'm over. Like, he shot it really well in the G League last year. We talked about this last episode. I think he guards. So to the other comment, I'm not going to sit here and demean Saddiq Bey. Saddiq Bey is an NBA player and he's very talented. But could Stanley end up being a guy that maybe eventually gets into the rotation if he really guards and continues to shoot it almost 40% from 3? Sure, because this team needs something like that.
Mm-hmm. And I'm curious, does this team go with upside for that spot? Stanley's obviously a guy who has that. Or do you just go for positional fit and also maybe getting another vet in there, because you have a very young big man group, and that front court really could use a forward that could either defend or shoot. Like, ideally both. I don't think you're going to get both, but that's the biggest need for this team. And there's probably going to be some guys cut who you could sign and fill that in. You have a young roster already, so I'd be curious if they're maybe reluctant to use that 15th spot on another young guy unless you're really, really convinced that it's going to be a move that pays off for you down the road. So I'm still TBD on that. I think through 2 games, Stanley's certainly done enough to put himself in that conversation. But at the end of the day, I think Stanley's also a guy, if you look at over the course of the season, does he crack the rotation? You have Joe Harris, you have Bogey, Asar, obviously some guys who would be over him. So, they have that hole at the 4, and it's probably will be some guys in a week who will be able to fill that spot. So that's still TBD for me. But if Stanley keeps shooting the ball the way he has, he's going to end up somewhere, I think.
Yeah, so Camille says, I'm still adding some wings to the mix, by the way. I don't know how, maybe a Harden trade. I'll say, like, the guy I have pegged from the Thunder that kind of fits into that 4 spot is Jeremiah Robinson Earl. He was a guy that was really good coming out of college. I was pretty high on him, and I think he is a guy that could potentially get moved whenever the Thunder have to make some of the decisions they're going to have to make here in, just a week or so, 10 days, I guess. So we're going to go to a short break. When we come back, Omari, we can really dive into these lineups, who's starting, who's not. Is Jaden Ivey actually going to come off the bench? There's all things to get into with that. And then a little bit later, again, our guy Wes will come on. We'll play some Sheet or Sham. We'll get into all of that right after this.
All right, we are back with segment 2. And Bryce, you hit a hot button topic at the end there. Jaden Ivey coming off the bench. I think that's been a subject of debate amongst the fan base. Like, obviously so. Like, he was your 5th overall pick a year ago, and you probably don't expect a guy like that to come off of the bench. But I'm just curious, through 2 games, what have you seen from Ivey in that role, and how would you approach that as well? Because obviously, I think Monty's prioritizing defense with Asar and Killian in that lineup, but I also think Jaden's talented enough to eventually force the issue there.
Yeah, I'm really interested to know, like, what kind of caused this from Monty Williams and the coaching staff. If this is purely a defensive thing, if Monty is saying, Jaden, you're coming off the bench until you really buy in defensively, I don't mind that. And quite honestly, I feel like the fan base has asked for this for a long time, Omari. You can't, as a fan base, you can't ask the coach to hold players accountable, especially defensively, and then get frustrated whenever they do it. And it's not like Jaden's not getting minutes. And just to answer your question, I thought Jaden played really well. I thought he did a really nice job attacking the lane in the first quarter. He continued to do it in the second quarter. He had some really nice passes, a couple that he missed. But the thing I put in all uppercase in my notes, Amari, I said he lacks a sense of urgency defensively. Like there was just some things where I'm like, Jaden, you got to have more sense of urgency there. You got to do that more aggressively. You got to do it faster. You got to do it quicker. I realize it's preseason, but I just can't help but wonder if that's what Monty and the coaching staff is trying to pull out of Jaden right now. Now, I'd also be interested, do they just see Jaden Ivey as this six man of the year? Like this is just the role he's going to be in. You know, I've said Isaiah Stewart, another guy that's been a hot button topic, is Stu, I think, is the perfect third big for a team, not necessarily a starter. Maybe they see Jaden as that. I don't necessarily agree, Omari. I think the ceiling for Jaden is higher. I would still putting in my starting lineup. But if it is the defense, then I 100% support that if they feel like this is a message they need to send.
I do think the defense is a big part of it. I mean, all through camp, Monty's just talked about not only the importance of improving on that end, and of course, Troy's talked about the Pistons need to be built on the defensive end, right? Like it's not going to be. I mean, not that you want to take threes, but if you're going to win games, it's going to be a defensive end, and you do have some wing defenders who are already capable, if not really good, on that end of the floor. So I think if you look at it from that standpoint, like what does Jaden Ivey give you in that starting lineup that you don't have? Like you have Cade, a star can give you a lot defensively as a rebounder, as a cutter. Like he's like in a lot of ways a perfect off-ball wing. Yep. if he had a jump shot, and that's obviously the big catch there. But he does everything else, and he has his some threes too. It's not like he's a complete non-shooter. What is Jaden giving you sort of in that role versus bringing him off the bench? He's been the first person off the bench in both games. He gets the ball in his hands immediately. He can attack, and he's going against second units, which will probably give him an efficiency boost this year. I think it makes sense. Like I know it's controversial, but when you just look at it from a pure lineup standpoint, I do think it makes sense. I think the question is, by that token, do you then have enough shooting in the starting lineup because Jaden Ivey can knock down off ball threes. Do you have enough shooting to make up for that? If you start a star over him, and obviously you'll get Bogey back, but that also I think puts pressure on Isaiah Stewart to really, really knock down threes. Because if you only have two good shooters in that lineup, it's probably not going to work. And we still don't know if K is like a true knockdown guy yet. Like I think he is. I'm sure he'll be able to knock down shots. I saw him hit like 5 or 6 straight today in practice, but until he does it, it's still a hypothetical, right? So there's a lot that I think Monty's going to have to mix and match for to get that lineup going. But if there is something that inserts Jaden Ivey back into it, it'll probably just be that the need for shooting outweighs the need for defense.
All right. So from YouTube user, I think regardless of the starting lineup that starts game one, it won't go well. I think we'll see several starting lineups before Monty settles into a rotation. I'm really interested because I brought up to Sam. He asked me, we were talking about Asar. We were talking about rookies that have been impressive. Obviously, Asar has been impressive. He goes, well, you wouldn't start Asar in Detroit, would you? And I said, I actually would. And he was very surprised. And so the starting lineup I gave him was Cade, Ivey, Asar, Boyan, and Duren. He didn't like it. He kind of pushed back. He didn't think the spacing was good at all. He actually would prioritize Jaden in the starting lineup, Asar off the bench, and then get another 3-point shooter in there, somebody like Alec Burks. And so that's where he has kind of pushed this Alex Burks as a starter. Where are you at just with the spacing of some of these potential starting lineups? Because we got some pushback last episode. You and I both support Isaiah Stewart. We both said Isaiah has to shoot better than 1 for 6. We've said that. He did. I think he went 2 for 4 in that second game. He's got to make guys start to guard him. But how worried are you about the spacing? Because the thing is, Omari, there are floor spacers on this team, but they're all vets. Some of them don't defend that well. So there's some give and take with these different lineups. So if you want the floor spacing, then you may not rebound or defend very well.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, there's only a handful of guys on this team who could really be classified as 3 and D, right? And one of those guys, Isaiah Livers, is going to be out, for another few weeks at least. So, again, I still think there's missing information just with some guys being out right now. But I think give and take is the right word for it, right? There's going to be times where you need to go in on offense. There's going to be times where you need to go in on defense. If you start Asar over Ivy, that's obviously just setting that defensive tone early, right? But then you can still bring Jaden in midway through and kind of get that offensive punch if you need it. It's going to be give and take all up and down the roster. It's an incomplete roster in the sense that some guys are just going to be a little bit mismatched positionally. You don't have a lot of shooting in the front court, so that's always going to be maybe a stressor for the rest of the lineup to kind of make up for that. Unless Isaiah Stewart can really knock him down, which is still a TBD. I think he can shoot, but you don't know if he can shoot, right? Like, is he 35% or is he 38? So there's a lot I think that will factor into that. But I am curious to see if Monty eventually gets to the point to where if the team just isn't performing that well on defense and you see the effort, but it's just guys having to figure things out at that point. Do you just say, okay, if we can't beat them, then that way we need to just get more points on the board. I do think he'll tinker with lineups throughout the first few weeks. First preseason games really isn't a lot to figure some of this stuff out, especially when guys are out. So I would be surprised if Monty has like a locked in rotation on opening night. I could see him tinkering over the next few weeks.
So this is from Max. He said, I've decided Cade, Burks, Asar, Boyan, Duran, and then off the bench, Ivy, Monty, Joe Harris, Livers, and Stu at the 5. Sasser keeps cooking offensively, can guard at least a net neutral defensively. He's getting minutes. What do you think about that as a starting lineup there? That gives you, Burks and Boyan spacing the floor. You have Asar as the defender, hopefully Jalen Duran. This is something a lot of the fan base wants to see, which is Isaiah Stewart at the 5. So you have him and Livers defensively, not a lot of perimeter defense in that lineup, but Monty Morris and Joe Harris really space the floor. Ideally, Isaiah Livers spaces the floor if he can get healthy, of course. And we know that's going to be a little bit into the regular season. But I think this just speaks to, like, now we just talked about Killian Hayes and how much Monty Williams, like, that's the thing, Omari, is like, I think we talk about this with Stu and him not being Asar doesn't space the floor either. So as much as we love Asar, he is someone you have to keep in mind when you're putting rotations together. Killian Hayes, whether you like him or not or whatever, it sounds like he has a chance to be in the rotation. He doesn't exactly space the floor either. So you have to keep that in mind. And then, as you said, you have no bigs that have already shown throughout their careers they can space the floor. So again, while there is floor spacers on this team, it's always hard. It's a little more difficult to piece it all together. It's fun, right? It makes fun for me and you to discuss it, but I don't think it's super easy. And I think we're going to see what you're talking about, where it may not be a thing where we see the same starting lineup 3, 4, 5 games in a row based on matchups and how people are playing. And do they say, hey, we just got to try to outscore this team tonight, right? They may just go into the game saying, we can't guard them, we can't defend them. Let's just try to outscore them and put our best offenses forward. So I think it'll be really interesting to see early in the season how Monty Williams navigates all of that.
Yeah, and there will be nights where you probably have to prioritize one over the other, or maybe even a lot of nights, right? Burks can really knock down shots, but he's not a great defender. Same for Bojan Bogdanovic, can really shoot, even handle the ball a little bit, but he's not going to defend. Otherwise, Isaiah Stewart, all of his value right now has mostly been, defense, rebounding, some interior scoring, that type of thing, but you need some other guys to step up. So I also think development will also factor into it. If Ivy can at least be a neutral defender and not, a not great one as he currently is, then that changes the calculus a little bit. Or, maybe Cade really emerges as like a really, really good defender. I mean, he's 6'6", 7-foot wingspan. We talk about the team doesn't really have that type of guy, but between Cade and Asar, you have two players who could occupy that type of role. So I do think a lot of it's going to be worked out in the first few weeks as Monty just gets a better handle on what his players are capable of, what they're not capable of, and which roles he thinks they can grow into. And it's going to be a process of trial and error. Like, he may not get this truly figured out until months into the season, right? Like, even if then, it's just going to take a lot, not only on his end, but from the players to show that they can improve in those areas.
Yeah, this is from Sharon Dalton. I would rather keep defense and spacing. And that's the give and take. You put out a lineup and people are like, well, that doesn't space the floor. And the counter can a lot of times be, well, it also doesn't defend or rebound. That's kind of why I like Asar in the starting lineup. Is I think he rebounds so well, that'll maybe make up for if it's Burks and Boyan. Now he can go grab some rebounds, obviously defend. Mikey Jacobs, I feel like we'll need to trade for a two-way Pat Will type. Yes, like I would love Patrick Williams. Let's talk about Asar. So this is from MB Well. Asar Ausar is different, bro. He's the ringleader on this team. I do think Ausar is really, really good. What have you thought? I know we talked about him after the first game. Second game, we've seen a lot of the same stuff. He's taking these matchups that we talked about already. He did get in a little bit of foul trouble in this game, which is something that has been discussed before on the pod, but he's rebounding the ball. I think he does a lot of the stuff offensively where he just cuts at the right time, offensive rebounds, the shooting. He has to be able to shoot more with the efficiency, right? We've seen him knock down some big ones, though. What have you thought from Ausar? I have a couple areas I think I would really like to see him improve, but where are you at after 2 preseason games?
Yeah, I think he's been as advertised. I mean, you mentioned the cuts, you mentioned the defense, the rebounding. He's done all of those things, and I still think that, maybe especially with the injuries, you're still kind of finding your place in the pecking order and whatnot. He did kind of take that step back three that fell like early in the shot clock
Yeah.
last week, which obviously is good to see, right? That he has the confidence to take that, with like 18 seconds left and also hit it. So you're even seeing some signs of growth here and there. But the way he just kind of dances around screens, I think is really, really impressive, right? Like we talk about his defensive tools, like that is a skill that a lot of players just don't naturally have. And not that anything's natural, right? Like, of course, you put a lot of hard work into that, but he also just appears to play with like this instinct that you can't teach. Just knowing how to make yourself available, right? Knowing when to cut, knowing when to just like tracking down rebounds. He rebounds really well for his size. He's a guy that that like it's a cliche, but he's like that type of Swiss Army knife that you need, right? On any given night, he could be one of your lead playmakers. He could be your lead defender. He could, cover some rebounding gaps, especially if you're playing smaller with Isaiah Stewart at the 5. There's just a lot that he does that's really useful for this team and is conductive toward winning. And I think through 2 preseason games, we've seen a lot of what we saw in Vegas and, of course, what he did at OTE last season.
Mel, man, you're in my notes. Asar's finishing needs to improve some, and his handle is loose. He keeps having to look down at his dribble. He said, "Love him though." No, listen, those were legit the 2 things I had in my notes from the Thunder game, and I don't want anybody to take this as hate or we don't like Asar. Like we've done is boost Asar going back to summer league. But I wrote in my note 2 offensive improvements felt like he was loose with the ball and felt like he has to grow finishing around the rim. And I do want to say this was something that was in the scouting report coming out of this season in OTE. If you went to Synergy and you changed the finishing at the rim to just half court, it wasn't as impressive as what you would want for somebody as athletic as him and the competition he was playing against. Now, the weird thing was if you went 2 years ago, it actually was pretty good. So I don't think it's long-term issues. I'm not concerned about it necessarily, but if we're just looking at these players and looking for areas of growth and those type of things, I do think those are 2 things he could look to focus on is look to finish a little bit better at the rim. And then that handle. And the reason I want to see that handle improve is because I actually think he can play with the ball in his hands because he does read the floor so well. I want to see him be able to operate ball screens and those type of things. So just some small areas of improvement, things to watch for moving forward with Ausar. What did you think about the big man battle? We came after the first preseason game and it was kind of the Marvin Bagley show after Wiseman played well, but not just incredible. And then Bagley got the start with Duren out, and then Wiseman kind of stole the show in his late minutes. I feel like these 2 are just going to be neck and neck all year. And I can see one guy getting the minutes. If he doesn't play well, then the other guy gets the next rotation. Is that the vibe you're getting with those 2 bigs?
It is right now, just because I don't think there's been a clear separating between them through 2 games. I mean, what James Wiseman, I think he made every shot. He shot 8 for 8, 20 points, 10 rebounds, plus 19. I mean, he was about as good as it gets in that game. But he did a lot of the stuff that I think you want to see from him. Being able to hit short jumpers. I thought defensively he was pretty good. He's rebounding, and he just looked engaged overall. I think what it could come down to is just that Bagley can thrive without the ball. Like he's a lob threat. He can, put backs, like he thrives in those things. And Wiseman is more give me the ball and I'll make something happen. But he probably isn't going to pass it, right? He's going to take a short jumper. He's going to post up and do something. And I think Wiseman needing the ball, in my mind, affects the lineups you probably put him in, right? Like you probably want him in more of a featured role rather than that auxiliary. I'm going to offensive rebound and, do the things we saw Bagley do last Sunday. So I am curious to see how that evolves this weekend with both of those guys healthy. and we'll see. We'll see how that plays out. But I did think that was a good response. After Wiseman was pretty quiet on Sunday. Where are you at with that, Bryce? Because I do feel like some of that could just be both these players attack the game differently, so it just depends on personnel some nights.
I don't know. Like coming into the season, I personally was Marvin Bagley, but I felt like the
Yeah.
team was going to prioritize James Wiseman. And here's the thing, like I wasn't going to die on that hill, Omari. That wasn't something I
Mhm.
was like going to pound the table and say, no, I really believe it should be Marvin Bagley. People would come back at me with really fair points. James Wiseman hadn't played very many minutes. Marvin Bagley's kind of a known commodity where Wiseman has the higher upside. I get all that. I have liked Wiseman's defensive rebounding. I think on the defensive end, he's really tried to prioritize that. I think both of them aren't that good defensively either way. And so it's kind of like, I think Wiseman gives a little bit of the ISO go get buckets thing that
Mhm.
you were talking about, where I feel like, and I could be wrong here, I feel like Bagley gets it a little more in the flow of the offense. What's intriguing to me, and I've always said this, I think Bagley's jumper actually looks decent. Like I think he actually could consistently knock down shots of all of those bigs. He's kind of the one that I would believe in just based on the form. And we've seen him make some of those trail threes here in preseason. So where I'm honestly at Omari, let him fight it out every single night. Give Wiseman the first rotation off the bench. And then if he plays really well, let him get the next one. If he doesn't, put in Bagley. And let's just let him compete all year long and see if one guy rises to the top or not. And I think that's just legitimately where I'm at.
Yeah, I mean, it may not be a battle that's like definitively decided, right? I mean, if one guy comes in and he's cold or just missing too many defensive rotations or whatever it may be, go off the other guy. You could keep flipping that switch just depending on in-game need and how they're performing at any given moment. Because we've seen Bagley go through some cold spells in the past too, and Wiseman's still learning a lot. So just another battle that could probably take a few weeks to be settled, if anything. But I do agree that I just feel like Bagley's a little bit more instinctive in how he attacks the offense, like knowing when to, dive, making himself available for lobs and stuff like that. And he has pretty good chemistry with Cade Cunningham as well. I feel like they really haven't played that many games together because Wiseman came toward the end of Cade's rookie season. And then, of course, Cade and Bagley missed a lot of time last year. But we saw that on Sunday that, Bagley is pretty good at playing off of Detroit's guards. So in the end, that could be what gives him the leg up if Wiseman's somebody who's going to continue to command the ball. But again, if Wiseman's going 8 for 8, then maybe you want him to have the ball, right? So yeah, I'm curious to see how that shakes out. And a lot of that, I think, comes down to Wiseman and his extent to be able to create his own offense.
I was listening to like a national podcast the other day, and somebody was talking about how they've been roped into the Detroit Pistons backup big man competition of James
Mhm.
Wiseman versus Marvin Bagley III. So it is really an interesting, guys that got drafted super high in the draft, all of that stuff. So they're names that people know. One thing, the problem with Bagley is we have a pretty large sample size of missing threes. Yes, that's true. I'm not saying that he's going to come in and really shoot it. I'm just saying, just based off the form, I'm always like, man, that doesn't look too bad. But we got to go to break here. And then Wes, I don't know what he has for us. I have no idea what these questions are going to be about. All I know is they're going to be rigged in Omari's favor, like always. So after this short break, Wes will join us looking real good with his new webcam, and we're going to play Sheet or Sham. Everybody watching live, you guys get ready to go and play with us.
All right, we are back with segment 3, and we're going to bring in Wes, who we're seeing in
You're
4K for
looking
the first
good,
time. Look
Wes,
at him!
man.
Look at
Let's
him! So
go.
clear, so clear. Look at him.
Wes, what's up, man? Take us home. Uh-oh.
Might be having some technical issues.
Technical issues.
Sorry, I was having some Wi-Fi issues. I think it's good now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Am I coming through good? Sorry.
Yes,
Yep.
you are. We hear you.
Okay, cool. Yep. Yeah, brand new webcam. You can kind of see my dog in the background there. Doing good. Real excited to jump on for Sheet or Sham. I got a bunch of like preseason stat stuff this time. Whenever you guys are ready to dive into it.
Yeah, let's get started. Can you give us the current results or whatever it is? I know Omari's winning. I don't really care, but just for the listeners, let everybody know.
So Omari's winning. It's 6-2 all time, but we did have a tie last game. So technically here, the first question is going to decide the last game and also count for tonight. So which one of you two wants it?
I want it.
All right, there we go.
You want it first. All right.
Yeah.
Here we go. Sheed or Sham. Through only 2 preseason games, Killian Hayes leads the team in minutes played. He is also the only
Sham.
player averaging more than 30 minutes a night.
Sham.
Oh, Sham. That was a strong Sham.
It's a SAR. It has to be a SAR. He played like 40 minutes game 1.
I'm gonna go Sham. I feel like not only a star, I feel like there's one other player who might have played more than Kill, but we'll see. I'm going Sham on that one.
I thought I'd get you guys on the hype on that one. It was Asar. Asar was first.
Yeah.
He's the only one over 30 minutes a
Okay.
night. Killian, though, is second. He's at just under 24. So
Yeah.
we'll punt. We'll move on to the next one for
I
the
just
tiebreaker.
remember he played like almost 40 minutes in that overtime game.
Yeah.
And then I remember watching this Thunder game and I was watching it back and I'm like, Monty just loves writing Asar Thompson throughout an entire game. You know, it doesn't matter who he's playing.
Yeah.
It's the dudes. It may be kind of the back end of the roster. Asar Thompson is going to continue to get minutes. So I felt pretty strong on that. May be the most positive I've been about an answer of all of these that we have done.
Yeah, I remember Monty talking about not beating to play Asar 38 minutes in that first game. And I mean, I honestly couldn't say off the top of my head how many he played on Thursday, but he started again, of course. And I knew he played a lot. Like he was out there most of the game. So that was good. So we'll settle it on this next one. And my hands are up. Bryce always says, me and Wes are in cahoots. It's not true at all. Wes has a completely separate Google Doc. I mean, even
no, that's why I think you guys are cheating, because it used to be on the Google Doc that we all have access to.
I never checked.
Now all of a sudden it's on a Google Doc that only Wes has access to.
Only Wes has it. Only Wes has it.
I changed it so that you guys couldn't highlight the Sheed or Sham questions and find the answers, because I just highlighted it black to try and censor it. But if you guys were a little forensic science, you could have figured it out in 5 minutes.
I'm not trying to cheat.
Idea.
We're not worried about whether
we're not cheaters. Neither of us are cheaters. So
just go to the second.
We play fair. We play fair.
Okay, let's go to the next question.
All right. Next question. This one also now is the tiebreaker. We'll go to Omari first, since Bryce, you got the last one. Sheed or Sham, James Wiseman leads the team in rebounds per game through the 2 preseason games.
Sheed. No. Just Sheed. I said Sheed. So Sheed. Yeah, I already said it. I don't think that's true, but Sheed. I already said it.
I want to say Sheed. My initial reaction was Sheed, but I have enough thought that maybe it's not, that I'll just, to break this tiebreaker and maybe get a win, I'm going to go ahead and say Sham, just because. My inclination was Sheed, but I'm going to go Sham.
It was Sham. It's Asar Thompson.
I knew it. I knew it was
the and Wiseman's second, 8.5.
Okay, say that. What are the numbers? Because it's got to be close, because Wiseman had 10.
Wiseman only had one. Wiseman had 1 rebound in the first game. I remember that.
Oh,
he only
really?
had 1. He only had 1 rebound. Yep. So he had 1, and then he had 10, and Asar rebounded decent in like both games. So as soon as I said Sheed, I was like, oh no, it's not Sheed, it's Sham.
What are the numbers, Wes? What were the averages?
Asar's at 9 and Wiseman's at 8.5.
Yeah.
No, so he had more than that. If he had 10 in the second game, then he had 7 in the first.
Well, I'm going to check real quick. I'm pretty sure he only had 1. Maybe
I thought he defensive rebounded. He may have only had 1 offensive rebound, but I'm pretty sure he defensive.
Oh, no, he did have 7. No, yeah, he did have 7. Okay.
He defensive rebounded pretty well in that first game also. But I mean, again, that just tells you what Asar does on the boards, which is really impressive. So what is it now? 6-3 or 7-3?
6-3.
Okay.
You got it. 6-3.
And it's 2-1 tonight already. Now I've got us to some big leads and lost them. Like I'm the ultimate like blow the lead in this game. But okay, I'm feeling a little bit better. I like it. Let's go. Got the fresh shave and got a dub.
All right. Well, this one's coming to you, Bryce. This one's coming to you. Okay. Sheed or Sham, Stanley Amude leads the team in free throw attempts per game through 2 preseason games. And I do want to throw in, because I forgot to say this in the beginning, we do still have phone the chat. So if you guys are ever in a situation where you're not sure, you can once per game ask the chat the question and see and go with whatever they say, if you so choose. So I just want to throw that out there.
Male YouTube user, all you guys that are in here all the time, you guys got to help me out with this. I'm going to say Sham.
I'm going to go, I'll just go Sheed. I'll go Sheed, because I actually think I know he's top two. I know he's top 2 or 3 because he's taking some end game free throws. So I'm going to go Sheed.
It's Sham again.
Ooh,
Who's
okay.
again Asar Thompson.
That's who I was.
leading
If
the
you would have
team in free
asked
throw
me,
attempts per game.
so
Okay.
how many is he averaging?
6.
Is Stanley up there though?
Yeah, he was up there. Jalen Duren is technically tied for first. He's also averaging 6, but he didn't play in the
Yeah.
second game. So Amude was right behind him.
Yeah. I knew he was top 2. I just didn't know if he was one.
YouTube user, I think it's probably true. I was wrong. It's Sheed or Sham, man. You gotta get in with. This is one of our favorite things that we created early in the history of the Pistons Pulse. I thought you were gonna ask if he led the team in 3-point percentage.
I thought he was. Yeah,
that's where I thought you were
that.
gonna go with that question.
Easy.
Yeah.
But
Too
and
easy.
I was definitely going Sheed on that one. So 3-1. Look at me keeping score tonight because I don't suck at the game. Finally, 3-1. Got a little bit of a lead here. Got to keep it going. What's our next one here, Wes?
All right, Omari, this one's going to you first. Sheed or Sham, Isaiah Stewart leads the team in blocked shots per game through 2 preseason games.
Sheed.
I think I know. Yeah, I was going to say Sheed also. I'm pretty sure he had a game where he had 3.
It's Sheed. 2
Okay.
per night.
Yeah.
But continuing with the trend, Asar Thompson is second with 1.5.
I was gonna say I know Asar's up there too, so I figured that was the top 2.
Asar Thompson's pretty good. So again,
Yeah.
while we sat here and had a little bit of critique about his game, nobody get it twisted. The Asar Thompson love on the Pistons Pulse is strong. Sel, you had it here. He called in Sheed. The chat is a little bit slow for us in StreamYard compared to what you guys are putting in YouTube, but go ahead and get your answers in quick. We want you guys to play along. So whether we actually phone the chat or not, drop your answers in the chat. We want to see how you guys are answering, comments, thoughts. This is definitely the part of the show where we definitely want to interact. We've talked about how much fun it would be to play Sheed or Sham with you guys as we are doing this. So definitely continue to drop those in the chat as we go through this.
And no cheating. We can only go honor code on this, so no cheating.
Yeah. No looking it up. Definitely.
Yeah.
All right, Wes, that's 4 down. Let's get to the next one.
All right, Bryce, this is back to you. And for these next couple, I went back to our predictions that we did a couple episodes ago and tried to put them in context of last season, all right? Because I figured I could only get a few preseason stat questions in, so I had to get creative. So, Bryce, you first. A few episodes ago, we predicted that the Pistons as a team would average 113 points per game. So, Sheed or Sham, if they did in fact do that, they would have been 19th in the league last season.
Sham.
You said if they averaged 113, they would have been 19th in the NBA last year.
113 and a half. Sorry.
You said Sham.
I said Sham.
Okay.
I actually looked this up whenever we did the episode, and I don't remember what the answer was.
Yeah, I was gonna say I wrote some stuff on like their points per game last year, and I'm trying to recall that information in my head, and I could not, because I know the pace of play overall was just higher and scoring was higher last year. So I think there was like, I just know scoring went up last year, so I'm trying to like contextualize 113 in like last season's NBA, which is really hard to do. You said Sham, I'm just gonna go Sheed. I'm going Sheed.
It's Sheed.
Ooh,
it is true. They would have been 19th. So they would be sandwiched right between the Clippers, who were at 113.6, and then a bunch of teams were at 113.4. So they would have been right in between there.
Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't think, for some reason, I was thinking they wouldn't have pushed them that high. I was thinking they would have stayed lower, even at 113.5. That was the prediction whenever Omari and I put all of our predictions together, and that's what it added up to. Okay. All right. So what's the score?
4-3, Bryce.
Oh, shoot. Gosh dang it. Okay. All right. Let's get serious here.
See if I can steal one. Come on.
All right. Next one. Bryce, you first. We also had predicted that Cade Cunningham would average 24 points, 6 rebounds, and 6 assists per game. So Sheed or Sham, if he had actually done that last season, he would have been one of only 5 players, including himself, to have a stat line of those numbers or greater. And again, those numbers are 24, 6, and 6.
How many did you say? He would have been the 6th to do that?
Yeah.
5th. So only 4 other players actually did 24-6. I feel like that's Sham. There's got to be more dudes that did at least 24-6-6 last year.
Yeah, like off the top of my head, I could think of 3 players who did it, but I'm trying to think of a 4th, and I can't.
Sel says Sheed.
So I'm going Sheed.
Yeah, Sheed. The only other players were Jokic, Luka, Steph, and LeBron.
Steph was the one I couldn't remember. Yeah, I was like, I know LeBron, I know Jokic, and I know Luka. I couldn't think of who the 4th person would be, but I was like, I can only think of 3, so that actually might be true, and that's actually crazy.
What did Shea average last year?
Oh, he went crazy.
He must not have had it. He must not have had the rebounds.
That'd have been something. This was all pulled off NBA.com. So if they're wrong, I'm wrong. I want to defer blame entirely here.
Oh, sorry, guys. I'm looking this up on my phone. So I am cheating. God, that man averaged 31 points last year.
Yeah, he went crazy.
He went nuts.
I'm surprised he didn't get to 6 and 6 though. Actually,
he didn't get 6 on either one.
Wow, that's actually surprising.
4.8 rebounds, 5.4 assists. Shea has never averaged. He's averaged 5.9 rebounds his second year in the league, but he's never actually averaged 6 assists. I was Googling so mad. I was so mad.
So I believe it's tied now, 4-4.
Yeah. Now look who's keeping score throughout the game.
There we go.
He's tied 4-4. And
how many more questions do we have?
Because I had a bonus question. So this was the last one, but I had a little bonus point that I threw in it just for fun.
Okay.
So maybe I'll give that one to you guys, but it won't count. All right. Which one of you two wants the last question? I'll throw it up to you guys. Which one?
I'll let Omari do it because I think I've gone twice the last, and I chose to go first.
Yeah, I want it. I'll take it.
All right. Omari, Sheed or Sham? The last time the Pistons had a winning record was the 2018-19 season.
Last time they had a winning record was the 2018-19 season. Sham.
This is rigged. Everybody here knows I've only been a Pistons fan for 3 years.
Wait. That is wait, is that Sheed or Sham? I'm trying to think. That is before I started covering them, which makes that a good question. I know they won. So they made the playoffs one year and they won 44. The COVID. Oh, okay. Wait.
The COVID year was
Sheed. I think it's Sheed.
He doesn't sound very confident.
Sheed. I'm going Sheed. That's the final answer.
That's fine. I'll go Sham just because he doesn't sound very confident.
Sham. They were 500 in 18-19. That was the Blake Griffin year. They were 500. So the last time was actually 16-17 where they won 44.
So that's when they won 44.
So 18-19 they went 41-41, right? Yeah, that's what I feel like I've just Googled all of their seasons. I remember that year being 41-41. Real quick, and then we'll come back to this from Caleb. It was my first Pistons game since 2011 and 3rd overall. I saw Omari in the crowd, but didn't get to say what's up. What are your thoughts on Windsor?
So here's what's I not ever, I don't think, spent any real time in Windsor, which, I know people in college who the drinking age is 19 over there. So I knew people in college who went over there when they turned 19 and celebrated, but I've not actually spent any real time in Windsor. I moved back when the pandemic hits, the border was closed, and since everything reopened, I just haven't been over there. So I think it's a cool place. I mean, I haven't heard anything bad about Windsor, but I need to make it over there and actually explore a little bit because I heard they have some really good food over there, and you have a Caesars, so you've got some fun downtown. So I actually need to check that out, but I have not been to Windsor.
Wes, did I win?
You did.
He's calculating.
You won.
Let's go. So now it is all of a sudden 6-4.
Yeah, you picked up 2 wins tonight. 6-4.
Let's go. Nice. Well done, Wes. I feel like we're having a little bit of technical stuff again. If you're live here, what was the final question you had or whatever, the tiebreaker or bonus question?
All right. So just for fun, obviously the last time they had won more than 500, right? They had a winning record in a season was 16-17. They had 44. Name the year that they had a winning record prior to that.
07-08.
Yeah, I have no clue. Like, you're definitely not getting a good answer from me.
Oh,
Was he
7 oh
close?
08.
He's
Yeah,
a
because
708.
Nice.
because they traded for AI the next year and they won 39 games and lost in the first round to LeBron. And then they didn't win at all after that because they a lot of reasons, but I knew that one. I wish that was the actual last question and not the
I knew
2018
you'd know
19.
that one. I figured I could get you on the 18-19 one. See,
See,
you say I bring it for him. Come on.
Wes is trying to beat the allegations that we're in cahoots, and I hope this puts it to rest permanently. That the question I knew was the bonus and not the lead one. So
it wasn't even a sheet or sham question. Like, it wouldn't have even been fair. Like, anything with history is not. It's just unfair to me. So, one last thing here from Caleb, and then we'll close it out. Thanks, Wes. Looking great with that new HD. And make sure you guys check out Wes and Jack Kelly all the time on DB Live. Make sure you subscribe to their YouTube channel, Detroit Bad Boys. They're doing great stuff. That's Wes Davenport, Jack Kelly, DBB Live. Make sure you're checking that on YouTube Thursdays and Fridays. Caleb says, I appreciate you guys. Always a great watch or listen. Passionate, but still rational. So hard to find in podcasts these days. I feel like at the end of the day, man, like, we love it. We are passionate about it. We just want to talk about Detroit Pistons and basketball and have fun. I've said it many, many times. We've all become good friends. We genuinely care about each other, good relationships, good friendships. And we're just trying to bring good quality Pistons content to you guys week in and week out. So I hope we're doing that for everybody. Again, leave ratings, review, Apple, Spotify. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, give it a thumbs up, all of that stuff. We appreciate it. We love feedback. We love the interaction. So let us know, hit us up on Twitter, whatever it is. Wes, thank you again. Omari, take it away, my guy.
yeah, again, thanks everybody for listening and excited to get to next week when we can actually go a little bit deeper and preview the season and watch some real basketball. So a lot of exciting stuff coming up. Thanks everybody for tuning in. And if you see me, like, feel free to like shout me out. I mentioned there's somebody at the open practice who shouted me out and they didn't introduce themselves. So by all means, like, feel free and I'll tell Bryce and we'll shout you out on the pod. So with that, I'll close this out. Big thanks to our audio producer, Robin Chan, our executive producer, Anjanette Delgado, and our sports editor, Kirkland Crawford. Also, big shout out to Wes, who's finally in 4K, and we'll talk to you all next week.